Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to episode 185 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we share the experiences and challenges of flying in midlife. Today, we're talking about things we've learned along the way, and with me today, as always, it's my friend and music row under the Bachelorette Super Charlie, flying a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. It's my friend Brian Siskin. Good evening.
Good evening. Glad to be here. Glad to be here with you all. The chat is already hopping, and I love that Geeta's in there, and I still stand by the fact that she should do our recorded intro, the next generation recorded intro. So Geeta, if you're listening, I understand you have your own podcast, but if you could just lend us your voice for the intro for this, we will pay handsomely in bad jokes or other non-valuables. But yeah, glad to be here. Super excited about tonight.
Also joining us from the West Coast, it's our sport pilot extraordinaire who flies a CTLS. We like to call the egg. It's everybody's friend. It's Ted. How you doing, sir?
Hey, glad to be here. Yeah, the chat's kind of hopping, talking about skiing, and I keep getting bugged that it's like record highs outside. So nice combination of all that. Hopefully, there's somebody listening to this like next winter and they're skiing while they listen to this, or snowboarding. I mean, we like them less, but they still count.
You know, stranger things have happened, I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, I was excited. Today is the first day it didn't rain in Atlanta at my house in maybe a month. It's been so crazy. And did I fly? No, but that's okay. We're going to be talking about things we learned along the way after getting our private pilots, but do want to catch up with everybody first. Why don't we start off with you, Mr. Siskin? What you been up to?
Well, we're either flying or we're talking about flying, and we're working on things on the ground related to flying. And I haven't been doing a lot of flying in the last week. It's been 197 degrees here, and I'm not interested in that these days. But I'm also kind of saving my duckies on the fuel budget front because another trip to far west Texas is coming up. So I'm just getting excited about that. It'll be the first time that I've taken my wife on such a long excursion. And so a lot of the things that we've learned along the way about long cross-country flying, it's one thing to do all those things smart and well for yourself, and it's a whole other thing to do them in consideration of another person that maybe has their own limitations or
expectations,
hopes, dreams, prayers. And so I've been kind of working on some of that planning. And a little highlight, I know that we all do this. I'll just front it with this. If you are working on your private pilot certificate, one of the greatest feelings when you get this done, it's great to get your temporary airman certificate, right? And hold it and take the picture and all that. But there's something about when it shows up in the airman registry, it's a really validating, interesting thing. I mean, the card obviously in the mail is the real icing on the whole cake. But something about the airman registry, I've had this weird relationship with the airman registry because my father is still listed in the airman registry, even though he's no longer with us. And there's something about him still being listed there that it's just this strange kind of, for lack of a better term, like a keep alive or something. And I was I was excited about this one because I finally saw that today it registered that I'm a commercial pilot. And I don't know, there was just something really cool about that. And when you look at the when you look at my father's entry, and I always laugh because it says airman opted out of releasing a dress or whatever. And I'm just thinking, well, wise move. He's not he can't get mail where he is, but the FAA is never going to find him. But when I see his listing, it's just, I don't know, there's something really cool about it. But I also kind of do a little bit of this. I've been almost checking things off. I'm like, okay, well, my dad was instrument rated. Boom, got that. All right. What else does he have there? Commercial. Great. Here's the thing. I might be meeting my limit soon, but I have to get multi to meet what my father accomplished. And then the last thing, it mentions in his listing that he's type rated in a RC Fairchild 123, C123. That's going to be a little tougher, but maybe, you never know. So anyway, pretty cool to see that. And I think for any of us that have achieved anything in aviation, to see it kind of come back to you in that way, it just feels good. It's one thing to know it in your head. It's another thing to see it verified in government documents or something. But
well, and now everybody that knows to look up a pilot's license, potential employers know that you have it now.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking with Katie the other day about something about, she thought that you could just go and look up how many hours people have. I just thought, wow, that would be wild, right? But anyway, so there's that. One other quick thing I just want to mention that I've been working on that is done, and I'm going to make it go live after this episode, is I've completed the second edition of our great Ultimate Pilot's Guide to Becoming a Midlife Pilot. Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Midlife Pilot is second edition version ready. It's really fed by all of the things that come through all of our community discussions and all that. And so we've added some new wrinkles while doing a massive up design. The original one was a bit of a draft. And while we were happy with it, we're really thrilled to release the second edition. And it's something we just like to keep putting out because it's something you can take for free from our website. You can send it to anybody that's thinking about becoming a pilot, really at any age, but maybe more specifically geared towards midlifers. And I'm just really happy with how it's come out. So that'll go live by the time you hear this. It'll be on midlifepilotpodcast.com.
Added wrinkles sounds very midlife. I don't know if you can get type rated in it, but if you go to Wendover, Utah, which is on the border of Utah and Nevada, that's where they've got the C-130 or 123 that was used for Con Air. So you can go stand in that and pretend that you're type rated in it at least. Ben, have you been up to anything?
I have. For those of you that are listening to the audio version of this, my title this evening is I Did It Right Finally. I took a trip every other year. My sisters, my three older sisters and I do a siblings trip. And we went back to New Smyrna Beach. And for those of you with excellent memories will know that that is the site of my infamous wrong runway landing. And it was helpful that 2 of the 3 runway services were closed. So I only had an option to land on one of them, but I finally got it right. I landed on the right runway. I had my sister in the plane for the first time, and she's the one that is married to my brother-in-law that I share the airplane with. And I really wanted to, give a good landing. And the wind was gusting. It was about 20-degree offset, but it was 10 gusting 22. So it was pretty sporty winds. And I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I know when I'm going to have a greaser when I'm about 200 feet off the ground, and I feel like I'm in the zone, and it usually happens. Well, I was in the zone, and I think we're probably 5 feet off the ground, and one of those gusts hit us. And it was not a bad landing at all, but it just wasn't the greaser that I wanted. So she was very happy with it, but I really wanted it. But I did give her the greaser coming back, landing at McCollum. But had a great time with my sisters. A lot of abuse, a lot of shenanigans, a little bit of day drinking, sitting on the beach. So had a really good time with them.
A siblings gathering like that is not where an event where you want someone to just kind of show up that you didn't expect, It's like, oh, nice to meet you, Jason. We have a lot to catch up on,
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was a fun weekend, and I did an angel flight before that. So it'd been a hot minute since I've flown last. So I got quite a few hours in last week. It was a lot of fun. And I'm not sure when the next flight's going to be, but I need to figure that out sooner than later. So, but yeah, things have been good. And I wanted to hit a comment that our friend Elliot put in there. He said, seeing a new rating on the FAA registry is like when Nathan Johnson saw his name in the phone book in The Jerk.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. All right. You want to get the feedback?
Yeah, I'll take the first one if you want me to, or you take the first one, I'll take the second one.
All right. I got the first one here. It's from Brandon T. He says, gentlemen, just wanted to say thanks for putting together the episodes with DPE Ron Horton. Hearing all the stories about bad CFIs reminded me how thankful I am for mine. I was 40 when I started. She wasn't even legal to drink and was building time, but she truly enjoyed teaching and was really good at it. Thanks to her dad being in aviation, she did have more experience than most pilots her age. She taught much more than what was required to pass the test and cared about how I was progressing. She did all of this while being very respectful of time and money. The money I was spending to do this. She has now gone on to fly charters, but I'm thankful for the time she invested in me and my aviation journey. Thanks for the opportunity to reflect back on my training journey. I love that because it's real easy for, especially midlifers, to just kind of write off all professional job-seeking young CFIs, but it's totally amazing how there's so many great CFIs that are on their way to somewhere else, but still take teaching very serious.
And it does kind of relate to what we're going to be talking about tonight. Not only teaching things to pass the check ride, but it sounds like she went into a lot more detail. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
The second feedback comes to us from Anthony S. And I love the title. It was in the subject line. I normally don't follow men out of the restrooms was the title of this feedback.
It certainly got our attention in the inbox.
Definitely got our attention. So he writes, good evening, midlife pilots. I started my PPL journey 12 months ago at the age of 52. I've lived in the MSY Bravo surface for almost 40 years, which is the New Orleans area, which probably contributed to me never giving up on the childhood dream of flying. I am currently about a month away from my check ride, but I want to talk about what happened in January. Somewhere between the highs of solo local flights, and the eventual highs of solo cross-country flights, I hit a slump in my training. It was a combination of poor weather, a failed progress check at my school, and a lack of community to lean on. Enter episode 128. Ted tries to recall the restaurant, I believe you pronounce that Couchon Butcher in New Orleans, a restaurant that either he or Mike Alphagoff left a midlife pilot podcast sticker on the restroom wall. That is how I found y'all. A random act of vandalism in the right restaurant at the right time. For the past 5 months, I've been a weekly listener, become a show supporter, and came out of my January slump with bells and whistles. Thank you, Ben, Brian, and Ted, for streaming into my life at the right time with the community you have put together.
I love that. I remember that visit. I don't remember who did it, and allegedly nobody did it, of course. Yeah, it's always fun if you find it random ways. I was working, getting my plane back from annual, and they had something not quite right. And so a young mechanic was helping me. This is like 2 weeks ago. And sitting there working on the plane. And he said, so I listened to your podcast. What? I said, yeah, there's a sticker on the plane. So I was listening to it. And this is a 23-year-old dude. And he does, mechanic and pizza delivery, right? Right. And it was like, this is great. Let's get people at any age that like aviation. And yeah, so I thought that was fun. I guess the sticker works anywhere. I've got one on the outside of the plane, and I get no compensation for it.
Well, thankfully, you sent me a whole big stack of stickers. So I'm just going to start going around Atlanta and start putting them on bathroom walls. Watch our listenership grow.
I sent you so many stickers that I counted them by weight rather than counting individual stickers. Yeah, it's I don't know.
I need
Brian
some more.
doesn't understand stickers, but
I need some more. And
I'll fly some up to you because I need a place to go to.
All right. Oh, and by the way, remember I said, Ben, that Pilot Jerry was going to be in town and that we were going to go out to dinner?
Yeah.
Well, last night, Katie and I got ready to go to dinner. And then I looked more closely at his message, and it's a week from yesterday. So,
okay.
So we went out and had a really nice time. But the point, that's about as midlife as it gets. I don't know, what week is this? Summer, when you live with a teacher, summer becomes kind of, all your routine is shot, and you're just kind of all hanging on by a thread. But,
Nice.
but the point is that if you are flying up here and you want to join us for dinner with Pilot Jerry, it's now next week, but it's Father's Day. So
It
you
is
probably
Father's
got things to do. Yeah.
Well, Brian, why don't we go ahead and hit the housekeeping?
All right. We'll knock it out here. We'll do the brief version. You can join our Patreon community and help us keep the Midlife Pilot podcast ad-free. Your support makes the show possible, and every membership level gets you into our incredibly active Discord community. For everything Midlife Pilot podcast, to support us on Patreon, send feedback, grab merch, check out event information, read our blog, and more, visit midlifepilotpodcast.com. And if you're enjoying the show, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We will read it on the air. Then hit subscribe or follow on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. It really helps other midlifers find us. We probably need to pull some reviews. We haven't done that. We'll do that next time.
I did look, and there were no new reviews.
No new reviews. Oh, okay. Everybody get out there. Come on.
Start bribing them. If you send us a review and an email with an address, I'll send you a sticker.
Yeah. And if you own, I don't know, like a Bangladeshi click farm, one of those things where it's just robots that have 1,000 cell phones that automatically get clicked or whatever, let us know. We need one of those.
Yep. Very cool. So, Ted, you want to hit our Patreon supporters?
yeah, we've got some new people that joined us this week, and I'd like to say thanks to them. At the Hershey Bar level, we have James K., Mike R., Michael M., and Jim O. Yes, we have a lot of Mikes and Joshes and Brians because remember in school, those were the names because we're in the cohort where those are the most popular names. It's not the Cadens and Jadens and whatever of younger generations. So I always am amused when I see the names come up. Couple of accomplishments. Andy K. soloed, and that was great. He shared a picture of that. And he had a really long medical. It took him 10 months. And as Wendell Geek said, and to paraphrase, that feels like its own separate accomplishment. And
Absolutely.
certainly being on hold for that would be a big deal. Mike Alpha Golf also shared a great photo in Vids and Pics, which could also go into tech nerding, but it was of the LIGO Observatory, which made me go dig. Now he's in New Orleans area, made me go dig out the picture of the LIGO Observatory that's over by me. And they're just long experiments in the desert, basically out here. So it's just there's like 2 of them, and we've both flown over them now. I thought it was really cool. But again, as nerdy as it gets. Dan C. flew into Dulles. There was a Udvar Hazy museum event, like a fly-in there. So flying into Dulles is, I think, as big as it gets. I don't know, where do you rank that for Atlanta and Chicago? Not necessarily on size, but on intimidation.
It's been my impression Dulles is a little bit more GA friendly than a lot of other ones, or they have been in the past. And I think the museum is kind of a contributing factor to that.
For sure.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that can intercept you around there.
Yeah, exactly.
There are a lot of things that can, and a lot of things that'll go faster than you on final too. So there's something you have to think about there.
There's 3 Bravos that all touch, and then you've got the Sifra and the Freeze, as we were talking last week. Like that's to me why that area is intimidating. Just like why New York is intimidating.
Right.
But it's not like Atlanta is any slouch, obviously.
No.
Different in that way. Yeah.
So cool. Well, thank you to the new supporters of Patreon. We do appreciate you guys. Tonight, we wanted to talk about things outside, things that go on past your check ride. maybe the trip you never took. This kind of geared to two types of listeners. People who talk themselves out of a big trip, or the one who goes far but knows there's some of its luck. There's no check ride for going very long distances, so nobody teaches it. So, that's something that we have to go through on our own. We've got the ticket. It's getting the gumption and hopping in the plane and flying halfway across the country or halfway across your state, whatever it may be. It's going to be different for everybody. But Brian, what do you think? You want to take the first part?
Yeah. So just to set the stage even a little further is just to say that we've had episodes where we've talked about flight planning. We've had episodes where we've talked about some of these finer points for sure. What I've been really interested in is trying to put all of those wisdoms a little bit more cohesively together. And what it just continually reminds me of is that I think that there's a massive gap in pilot training that I've seen. Now, you can take backcountry courses, or you can take mountain flying courses, or you can, there's a lot of things that are within a particular set of curriculum and specialty. But I think just more generally, one of the things that I've observed, there's just a lot of people that are we okay?
Yeah, something weird happened, but
yeah,
I think we're back.
All right, Ted, what'd you do? You're looking mischievous.
My hands were free. Yeah. I didn't do that.
All right, now Ben's over here. Okay, there we go. All right. So anyway, I just feel like that this gap exists that we've been sort of talking around a lot for a while, and I'd like to try to have a little more of a cohesive discussion about it, and maybe I have done something about some of this as of late. But I've seen a lot of pilots, maybe just to even start with what Ron Horton was saying, that the failure rate of private pilots, and then the dropout rate. I think it's something, I'm not sure if he spoke to that or not, but I want to say it's something like 4 out of 5 or something like that. Like, don't even finish private pilot training. And so it takes so much to get this done. And then you see people not doing maybe the most that they can with it. I think that as a native idea, we're all getting in planes to go places. And I see a lot of people participating in the act of aviation, but not necessarily utilizing general aviation to the fullest extent. And when you think about how incredible it is that we live in this country where the post-war internet was airports and interstates, they decided to just absolutely connect everything. And we still have enough remnants of that kind of ingenuity and ambition all over this country. It's hard to explain to people what you're opened up to as a pilot in general aviation and the places that you can get directly to that are off the beaten path and all of that. So anyway, I just feel like I'm constantly wanting to sort of inspire confidence in folks that are not maybe taking full advantage of that. And so, I started kind of breaking down what it is and looking back at a lot of our conversations and what the community's said. And like you said, Ben, there's no check ride for this, right? And there's not really an avenue. So you kind of just get out there. Now, flight clubs and others might have sponsored things that are kind of helping people, but I think it all starts with, and Ben, you've been a huge help to me with this, as well as our friend Erica Gilbert, with just weather. And to start the conversation, I just want to get into just how easy it is for people that don't go far to lose sight of the importance of understanding en route weather. And it's so easy to just look at your initial point of departure and your destination, because if you're flying for 30 minutes, you're probably not as concerned with drastic changes. So you're not necessarily digging into TAFs. You're not exactly, you might be, right? You should be. But if you're flying 30 minutes, you're kind of just, I think a lot of times just looking at conditions of one airport, looking at conditions of another airport, and then taking it from there. But, I think that when you consider that most of GA fatalities are rooted in decision-making, as you start to stretch that timeline out of how far you're flying, the importance of en route weather people talk about it, but I think that where people maybe fall short is the en route realities of that, the challenges of that, the different options that you have, and how much it means to really understand prog charts more and more, and things like that. So Ted, you've done an absolute insane amount of this is all, and I want to frame this whole conversation. This whole thing is around VFR. Most pilots are VFR pilots, and that's who I'm aiming this at from my point of view, at least. IFR, totally separate thing. But Ted, you have taken VFR very, very, very far.
Well, and keep in mind that most IFR rated pilots are still flying VFR. So
yeah, there's that too.
That is the focus here. And we're also talking, what are the skills you need to learn after your check ride, or when you're ready to venture beyond your airport. And that's definitely in training. The things you have to think about are, is the next airport over, going to have good weather? That's easy. You can just look at the TAFs and figure that out. How do you know when the airport 500 miles away, a mountain range away, has good weather? You can't just look at the TAFs. How do you know in between those? There aren't necessarily airports, and TAFs are not a great way to get that overall picture of the weather. That's definitely something I struggled with, and prog charts are not my favorite. I'm not Erica for sure. But this just reminded me of, because we were talking before the show about, you have to think about from the time you tie down your plane at your destination, because this isn't about flying, right? This is about getting to a destination and doing your thing. You still have to think about, what is the weather in those 3 days that you're tied down? And it just reminded me of taking my plane to my annual and not having the tail tie down, which is very special in my plane.
Mm.
And struggling over that because it was going to sit overnight and the weather wasn't absolutely perfect, and chewing on it and then making the decision, okay, I'm going to drive 45 minutes to the airport, an hour in the opposite direction to drop it off, and then 45 minutes home just to take the tie down in so I could sleep at night. That's the sort of thing you have to think about. Is, I'm at my destination, my plane or the rental plane or the club plane, it's still your responsibility. And these are things you think about. This is not, I have the plane for 2 hours, I walk away from it when I'm done, somebody puts it away at night. This is you. And so those are just the things I thought about with this.
One more quick point that I wanted to make on the weather for VFR pilots. It actually applies to all pilots. Even if you're doing that 50-mile, 100-mile trip, the short trip, this time of the year, specifically in the Southeast, thunderstorms are popping up everywhere. So if you're only looking at your departure and arrival airport, they could be complete VFR, but you could have some nasty weather in between. So that en-route planning is very important.
Yeah, I guess, I'm talking about kind of the trivialness of this. I didn't make it home for my long cross country as a student sport pilot, which I was doing private pilot length, because of the weather.
Right.
So it still matters even with that, even within a couple hours.
Well, I also just want to say here, last thing about the weather before we move to the next piece of this is just to say that personal minimums I find to be necessary, but also a little bit strangely problematic, because I think that when you're cultivated, and hopefully you're being cultivated into having your personal minimums and documenting those and all that, you're coming out of training. Okay, here's where I start. I can do this kind of crosswind, and you keep these things written down. There's not a very clear process on how, what I call ratcheting your personal minimums. There's just not a clear path to that. The question you're always going to hear from people is, well, how do you know when you can break them? And, people will say, rightly so, you do that on the ground beforehand. You don't choose to break your minimums in the air. But also, let's be a little realistic here. That's nearly impossible to completely maintain, because conditions are dynamic and things might go a couple knots over, or the ceilings might come down 500 feet lower. And there's this want to be very precise in aviation, and cloud clearance says, yes, I'm exactly 2,000 feet from that cloud.
Less. Yeah.
But I think that when you get into the longer trips, you have to start thinking about conditions and things that are going to cause no-go or go or no-go decisions that are different, I think, than personal minimums. I think you have to factor in more things that will keep you from flying. And it's not just about your personal minimums and wins in things like that. And so when you get into things like VFR over the top, you have to be thinking about ground contact. You have to be thinking about trending weather. So I just think that in general, there's a lot to pick up here about having maybe more structured ways to ratchet these minimums and adjust them for trips because it's just a different ballgame. And granted, I say this all the time, but it's like, hey, a long trip is just a series of short trips. You know, you don't have to take on the whole thing all at once. And honestly, things are so dynamic in aviation, you kind of just need to keep your focus on the next leg. But one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, and we'll get into later, is how to ratchet those minimums. But the next thing I wanted to kind of get into, and this is Ted's favorite thing, it inspired our favorite T-shirt that we have. And guys, if you're going off the document, I'm just kind of vibing here. But
let's go.
We have a T-shirt that Ted's famous saying is printed on. It's always fuel. And there are so many accidents that are because of fuel. In fact, even though it's hyperbolic, we're not going to say accidents are 100% fuel, but it's always fuel is, it's like, if that came to mind to be on a T-shirt, then maybe it's something that you should be thinking about. So, you know, when you think about long trips, and Ben, this is something you've done so many long trips, and you have the highest fuel burn, let's just say, of any of our airplanes.
That's true.
So in that case, and this is kind of also dipping back into the personal minimums thing, but you might have minimums that say, I will manage fuel to this point in the way that I'll have the VFR required minimums, plus I always have another hour or 30 minutes or whatever you have. Do you have that written down somewhere? Hopefully you do. But when you get on a trip, you might need to think about that a little differently. It depends, it depends on where you're going, how frequently, how available is fuel where you're going. There's a lot of, what are you up against? So
so my thing, when I'm doing a long cross country, I always plan for the self-serve fuel for the machine to be broken. And specifically when I started flying, the NOTAMs would never be updated to show fuel unavailable. So I always found it important to have 2 or maybe even 3 other airports that were within my fuel range that I could go to in an event that fuel pump was broken. Or I landed at one where they had fuel, but there was no self-serve station. It was only full serve, and the truck was broke. And even though you couldn't pull your plane, the truck was off the lot. So they had fuel, it's just they couldn't get it into your airplane. So you plan for alternate. I haven't spent any time flying, Colorado and west, where airports are further apart from each other. 99% of my flying has been east of the Mississippi. And what is it used to say? You can't swing a dead cat without hitting an airport around here. I mean, it's just, oh, sorry, Ted. I know you have cats. It's probably a little, I apologize.
I'm okay. Yes.
But no, seriously, you always plan, when I'm doing if I'm going up to Osh this year, I'm going to pick the cheapest fuel spot, but I'm also going to see there's 3 or 4 other airports around that I can get to. So that's a big part of it. Go ahead, Ted. You said you.
Yeah. So, in defense of it, doesn't matter your fuel burn, that you can still mess this up. This is a reason that I'm a fan of a high wing that has a both selector. Now, Ben's situation is that doesn't always help because it only pushes fuel back to one tank. But still, the point is, I'm hopefully 50% less likely to have forgotten to switch a tank and run out even though I've got fuel. which is really where that saying comes from, is those situations. But because I'm kind of a snob about using MoGas, I have 700 hours in my plane, and I've managed to avoid leaded gas in it, even in that time. There have been several times where it's like, okay, if X doesn't happen, I'm landing and taking care of this.
By the way, can I just say something here real quick?
Yeah. Yeah.
You would never have a problem, even if you did discrete tank switching left to right.
Yeah.
You're never in that plane going to get to a point where you forget, because the lean would be so intense. You'd be like, why am I going 360 degrees?
I'll occasionally burn just one tank, and that especially worries me about forgetting that I've switched it to one tank. But my point is that even with long legs, I plan my stops as if the only MoGas station in Idaho does not have fuel. So usually I have enough to cover to the next stop. And I can always stop anywhere in between there and grab, load that if I need to. But those are the things you really have to think about. And so it's like the gas stations are even further apart from me than they'd be in the West.
Yeah.
I know every station west of the Rockies that has MoGas. But these are definitely concerns. And I've had that. It's like, I am watching the fuel here, and if it goes below this, I am stopping. And
it's not worth the stress.
I have this header tank that has a warning on it, and that means I'm down to 1 gallon, which is 15 minutes. And that's one of those things that's programmed in my brain, which is, if that light goes off, I am landing at the nearest airport, maybe even sooner than an airport. That's programmed in.
Yeah.
It should never happen. But get that, those are the kind of the mentalities you need to have. And that's why you end up over planning your fuel stops so that you know which ones, what your alternatives are.
Yeah. I think it's important not to hyperfixate on your destination and just take in the idea that you're going to see more interesting places and more maybe small towns or whatever it is. You're just going to have that much more of an adventure, but you got to you got to take things as they go. Another thing that a newer person to traveling might run into, this is just little things that you either have heard of people experiencing and maybe don't want to experience yourself, or maybe have. But when you go to a self-serve fuel stop, you enter in. So, okay, imagine you're a private pilot and I've only flown in your local area, and they have a fuel truck, and you always just get full service fuel. Now you're getting out there and you go to a place where they've got a machine, and then you put your only credit card in that you're traveling with, and you put in, I just want to fill it up, please. I don't know. And then it holds, $3,000 or whatever.
It thinks you're a jet.
Yeah. These are the little things, right? Where in one, you could put we talk about weather, we talk about all these things, but another thing related to fuel is just how to do fuel. And you can do it in such a way that you could cripple yourself. So it's really two things there. Have multiple forms of payment ready to go. Yep. Have cash, have multiple cards. It seems like common sense, but a lot of times people don't roll with stuff like that. And, it's not everything just doesn't take Google Pay or whatever. So these machines will hijack your card, sometimes erroneously, potentially, right? Like, you have to expect that that's going to happen, that this card that I put in here a whole account is going to have to get locked down for fraud until further notice, so be thinking about, those kinds of things. And so when you're on the ground, I think that's where so many of these things come into play. I had an experience, and I was trying to remember where this was. I was telling Katie about it the other day, but it was in Tyler, Texas. Let's talk about heat and EFBs, right? Everybody's trying to figure out how to keep their iPad cool, and you see how fast they overheat in the summer. People will say, have redundant this and redundant that. But when you get into a position where you are kind of, out there, and you're maybe going, you know what, I'm going to go 70 miles another direction, and I'm going to go land here and get fuel because the weather here now is such that So even if you planned out everything to all of your en route airports and you printed out all of those taxi diagrams as backups and everything else, things are going to happen. You're just going to get caught into situations. This kind of dovetails into a couple things for me, but I had a situation where I was in Tyler, Texas. It was 1 million degrees and I needed to refuel, and it was full service, little FBO, but towered. And I went inside with my iPad to download the latest things, look at the latest things, cool down, make sure I didn't leave it in the plane. Please don't do that. Don't leave it in your plane. And I was only in there for 20 or 30 minutes. And then I got out. And I got right in the plane. It was so hot. You want to get that fan on as fast as possible. So here I am cranking up the plane. And I swear my iPad died before I could even test the brakes to get going. It was gone. And I didn't have taxi diagrams. I didn't have any of these things. And sometimes I suppose it's, nearly unavoidable depending on what choices you make and what your alternates are and all of these things. You can't have the whole world printed out anymore. I guess you could, but it will affect your weight and balance. But I was in a situation where I was hot. I was fatigued. I was, feeling a little rushed. I just wanted to get off of the ground. My iPad's dead. I just need to get this plane in the air. I just want to get out of here. And one of the things that I did is, and this is something that a lot of people might be too prideful to do, too proud to do, ask for a progressive taxi. There's no shame in a progressive taxi. These controllers, I guarantee, would rather deal with you on a turn-by-turn instruction basis than to have you do anything that close to a runway incursion or anything that is unpredictable or that is problematic. So that's a couple of things I've been leaning in here to highlight as well. So what are your thoughts?
Unfamiliar fields is one of the things about doing cross country, and you can plan as much as you possibly can in advance, including looking at satellite views and that type of thing. When you're like, where's fuel? Where does it seem like parking is? Call an FBO. Places I go usually don't have FBOs, but still qualifies as that. Progressive taxi, though, reminded me that the airport that I was based at first has parallel runways and a crossing. Crossing is very rarely used, and they would give instructions. So I'm a low-hour pilot. They'd give instructions. It was going basically straight down taxiway was about 5 elements. And I got so that I had it memorized. But there's a while in there, it's like you're crossing a runway and they'll give you clearance for it. Are you sure they give you clearance for that? If you're a newer pilot or you're an unfamiliar pilot, are you sure? Why don't you just stop when you get to that runway and ask? So those are the types of things. Again, just get rid of your pride. It's a lot easier to stop and say, hey, am I cleared to cross 0220 than it is to have them give you a number and that type of thing. So these are when you start going to these places that are more unfamiliar, you can do all the research you want. Hopefully you're landing at a place you've done the research on, because that gets even worse. But even with doing all the research, this is still unfamiliar, and you are not going to know procedures and how you're not going to have this down like you do at your home field or the field next to you.
So I have one quick story. This happened last week at New Smyrna Beach. It is under the Daytona Charlie. And the FBO there, Airgate, was fantastic. Nice young lady who was a CFII was running the desk. And so I asked her, do you know if the Tower Hill will give you a flight following on the ground? And she says, no, I don't believe they do. But I knew Daytona, it's also where Embry-Riddle College is and where they train out of. And this was Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. So I wasn't expecting it to be very busy, but I had to think ahead and say, all right, we're going to go VFR because we wanted to fly up the coastline, and it's really hard to do that on the IFR. And, you have to think ahead of, it's kind of common knowledge at this school that this is a super, super busy airspace. What's going to be the best way for me to exit this area? It's just something that I think you need to think out. And to your point, and One Dull Geek made a comment on this, I'll go ahead and bring it up. He says, for those of us who have flown mostly on single runway fields with a single taxiway, taxiing around fields with crossing runways can easily get confusing, especially when they're towered. And I cannot emphasize that enough. I have flown into PDK dozens and dozens of times, and I promise you, every single time I've got my taxi diagram up, it is still very confusing, and I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
So to Mark's point, and to a lot of VFR pilots out there who've only trained on single runways, it's very, very easy to get lost, and there's no shame in it whatsoever. To kind of
absolutely
your point.
Yeah, absolutely. And a whole other thing that I haven't even thought about to mention here is that PDK is a great example. When the airport you're going to has a special video that is created by the FAA about how to get in and how to get out and things to watch out for, watch that video. Pay attention to that. Seriously, at PDK, they're talking about hot spots. They're talking about a lot of things, and it's all based on calamities that have occurred. So be ahead of that. It's not just going into special flight rules area type of things. It's just going into a place in Georgia, and it's bonkers, right? So a lot to think about there. One of the things I also wanted to mention here is that, and Opposing Bases talked about this a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was great, but I had a little bit of something to add, so I'll just use our own podcast to do it. I did send them feedback, but hey, let's just do it here. They were talking about how valuable it is to study the environments that you're departing from and coming into, but the surrounding land. You need to be having a sense of when your engine fails and you've got to go straight within, say, whatever, 30 degrees or whatever you want to say here. When you cannot turn back, are you going a little bit left? Are you going a little bit right? Are you going straight? And what should you expect when you are faced with that? And wouldn't you like to know right now so that you don't have to waste any best glide to pitch down to see things, right? Like you just need to be there, understanding already what it is. And, they had mentioned all the great things, right? Like study satellite maps, use any available resources. The thing I added or wanted to add to that, and this is increasingly important as you get out there and more out there, is when you land somewhere, even if it's just for fuel, talk to a local pilot or the ramp guys. If it's a towered airport, the line guys are probably all pilots. Ask anyone and everyone that will talk to you if they have an idea of, hey, we're departing 2-1 today. What's the best out if I have an engine out under 1,000 feet? Which direction should I try to go? Because when you're going into a place, you're not looking at what's off the departure end, right? When you got to take off 15 minutes later or whatever it is, and you just you got to be familiar with that stuff. But one little caveat, though, that I wanted to add is that satellite imagery can be very dated, and it might be totally developed where all of that was now. So it's all about what Ben, you're always saying, always have an out,
right? Never
leave good runway behind, and don't have any hesitation about if you realize you've gotten in the plane and you've started the plane and you still, and you realize that you have not checked these types of things, don't say, well, we're already started up, it'll be fine.
Right.
You still are in a plane with a radio. Ask the people at the tower or any other pilots on the frequency, and you're taught to use every resource you have while you're in the air and you have maybe a situation that applies to even the ground before you're in a situation.
Yeah. Use every bit of available resources is important. I even think of, hey, where do you do run-ups here? There's no spot for that before this runway. Am I going to get out there and be in the way of everybody? So those are the sort of things you can ask. You could ask your DPE, for instance, when you're on a check ride, you have no idea where it is.
Yeah.
I want to hit Elliot Cox's comment. The first part of it, he said, ground ops is as hard to learn as approaches in some cases. So it can be as difficult as IFR. And that is very true. These experiences vary. and you may not get the local procedure correct. You just need to get close to try to do what everybody else is doing, especially like run-ups, right? Like there isn't a spot for it. So you what are people doing? What do they say to you? Do that. So, yeah.
Very much so. So, Brian, why don't you help us test? You mentioned it earlier, the ratchet, the real differentiator. Won't you go ahead and...
Well, it's probably as good a time as any to announce something here, since we're already this far into the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, do it.
I am launching a ground instruction course called The Long Way, and it covers all of these kinds of minutia and a ton more. And it's available at makesmallcorrections.com, which I'm going to be doing live cohort sessions and also one-on-one sessions with people. I've built out a pretty extensive pilot notebook and a lot of resources, specialized checklists and supplements and worksheets, all about how to go on the long trip that you've not been doing because you just not quite had the cross country confidence yet. So I'm announcing a thing I'm doing, and it's been a lot of planning and a lot of stuff in the works, but it's at makesmallcorrections.com. Now, there's basically a trip kit, a trip planning worksheet, all of these things. But there's also, when you're talking about the ratchet, Ben, I've always been frustrated by the concept of personal minimums because they're so important and you have to have them accountable, shared with others and accountable. We have a place for that in the Discord. Personal minimum is so important, but it's just not very clear how to adapt them. And the more you're flying, the less you're maybe, I'm not sure that I need to talk to a CFI to change my crosswind minimum from 11 to 12 knots or I don't know, whatever it is, right? Whatever your thing is. But I think also, like I said, there's a lot of minimums that go beyond what you normally think about in the way that we kind of started this conversation. So I've got a whole amazing adventure checklist is what I call it. And it's available for free at makesmallcorrections.com. But it provides basically a log and a methodology for ratcheting your minimums for specifically the purposes of these longer excursions. And the course in general goes way deep into more pragmatic considerations around weight and fuel and density, altitude. It's not an academic, I already learned this in ground school kind of thing. And it's not going over the FARs. This is a real world gained from all of the experience that I've had from VFRing it all over the place. And then what I've learned to know, come to know from you, Ted, and from you, Ben. I mean, Ben, you were so helpful to me in my early stages of this. Can you believe that the same guy that would call you, when ceilings are 3,000 feet is now saying, hey, I've got a ground instruction course that'll help you do all this. But isn't that a testament to what it's all about?
Here's what I'm really hearing. Yeah. You used to rake me over the coals for not sticking to my absolute hard concrete personal minimums. And what I'm hearing you say now is...
No.
I'm just teasing with you.
Personal minimums are personal minimums.
Yes,
I'm just saying we should expand the definition, I think, and the resolution of what those things are and 100%. Have a methodology for how those things adapt and when. So yeah, I just kind of came up with this whole, kind of small corrections framework and how to just manage the psychology, the decision-making, all of these things. As a purpose, I just want people to be more inspired and more confident to get out there, even as when you see like, oh, I'm just a VFR pilot, it does not mean you can't TED yourself all over the United States.
We've got a new verb, everybody.
Yeah. Go TED yourself.
There's a t-shirt.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a t-shirt.
So I'm just super excited because I don't know. It's a real decision for me to turn the corner and leverage these instructor certs that I have. And if you do one-on-one with me, it's loggable and all that. So, I mean, there's a lot of value to it. But what I just hope is that I can get people from deciding or finding ways to not take those trips to being more confident enough to actually see them through and make it happen and then share the stories here and then tell us what you learned that was woefully forgotten in the course that you wish you would have known. And then we'll add it.
Brian, I can't tell you how many people I've come across, especially when I was working and going through South Georgia, how many people that got their ticket and just let it kind of die on the vine.
Yeah.
And the number one reason, in my opinion, is they just did laps in the pattern, or they flew 40 miles away to go to a burger and came right back. They never took the step to actually go somewhere. And so I really think this is going to be a valuable tool for those people out there that are just, they're a little wary and they need help. And I think this is the help that they'll get.
Yeah. And then also just sometimes you just need somebody to consult, and you should diversify who you choose to do that. But I think that what I'm interested in is, instead of bugging you all the time, Ben.
I miss it kind of, actually. It's been a long time. But
I know.
Because you're the instructor now and I'm the student, but that's okay.
No. But it's really, it just comes down to, I don't know, just being as encouraging and supportive as you can possibly be for other people to get the most out of all this. This is so hard. This is so difficult. It's so expensive. You've come this far. Let's see it through, and, as much as it seems like a lot to go places, what I think I've really managed to do in this course is to figure out how to really convey, with the right system and the right structure and the right construct, you're really just biting off small pieces of small trips and then putting them together end to end. But we've just learned so much about how things can go wrong. There's so many things in here about just talking to your mechanic before you go and letting them know, that, hey, I'm about to go do this thing. If I call you, it's not because I'm trying to annoy you for the next appointment. I need you. Just there's so many small little wrinkles, how to deal with your family and your friends and when to communicate with them and when's time to worry and when's time not to worry. The reality of VFR flight plans, we're not doing those typically, but you need to know it's not just going to get your hamburger anymore. Now you're going to be where and you can tell where these things are going to happen, because if you look at the maps, it'll tell you you're out of radar now, or you're running out of options here, and you need to make sure that you have a flight plan, because if you disappear, no one will ever know. So just a lot of things around that. This is not about like the craziest expedition, and have 12 GPS SOS devices, wrapped around your head or something. It's more like that in between, right? The real world trip. So that's what I really hope that it does for people. And we go over some tools. There's just a lot of really great resources, and I'm not sure that people are putting all these kind of things together in the right chain. But the last thing I'll even say here about it is, if there's anything you take away from this whole conversation, it is you're likely in a single engine aircraft. Your engine, you need to expect it to fail. And when it does, where are you going? Is that the point where you lament the route that you chose? Is that the moment that you say, why did I just say here to here, direct, enter, magenta line, I'm going from here to there? You have to start thinking more resolutely about your route planning, and the smallest little detours will add very little to your trip that will make huge differences, possibly between you surviving and not surviving. So we'll get into all that stuff.
Yep.
Smallcorrections.com. I hope everybody, has a look. Grab the free thing that's there for you. And then if you want to sign up for the course, it's been 4 weeks, once a week, 90-minute sessions with me and a cohort of others, and all work together to help each other do these trips that we want to do and learn a bunch along the way. Then I've got this course now. So
that's awesome.
Very good. So y'all absolutely check that out. So wrapping up, we want to remind everybody, we need some reviews. Like I said, if you email me your address, I will send you stickers. Don't forget to hit subscribe on your podcast player. And then, fellas, wanted to ask you, as always, anything else for the good of the order?
Yeah. our friend Gita Brown had a Airfax podcast airing. She was on it just a couple days ago.
So
you
cool.
can go seek that out. And she was talking about dad's logbooks. She wrote an article last year about that that's also on Airfax. So you can go find her article on that. You can read her, or you can listen to her podcast episode about that. And Gita, friend of the show.
Definitely. I am a subscriber and avid listener to the Calm Cockpit podcast. It's a very interesting perspective from a lot of different points of view, but from the mental standpoint and the mental and physical fitness standpoint, I've really gotten a lot out of it. So y'all should definitely check that out. All right, fellas, wrapping up tonight's bit of wisdom are for our student pilots. A student pilot, because confused listener with the headset doesn't fit on a logbook. Signing off, episode 185 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.